this something you learned? Were you born an entrepreneur?
You got to start small.
I have not allowed being a woman to hold me back.
Credibility is not just making money, it's about making sure that people trust what you're doing.
Law practice is not only about going to court, it's about advice.
It's very difficult to hire somebody who's not motivated and then make them motivated.
One of the things that I'm known for is integrity.
They have to see you as a person of integrity.
Welcome to the Executive Lounge with me and Shira Ado. This is a thought leadership show that brings you the experiences and the lives of men and women who are blazing the trail for success, fulfillment, and making impact around the world. My guest today is a man who was born and grew up in a little town called Verano Brianza, which is about 25 or 23 kilometers thereabouts north of Milan in Italy. He is 61-year-old Paolo Nespoli, an active astronaut. And I'm holding myself together because I don't want to be super excited. But as a kid, you all want to be in a spacecraft at some point. And I'm going to try and vicariously live that experience through Paolo's experiences. Paolo, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
Did it start for you as a child, wanting to be in space or?
Well, yeah, I remember I was lucky enough that when I grew up, there was the first images coming from the moon, and I remember this astronaut, jumping, walking in this weird way, and actually I remember then driving on this lunar rover and throwing up all the lunar dust and going around, and as a kid I was like, wow. So when people would ask me, so Paolo, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to go to the moon, I want to drive the rover up there. And so that was the idea when I was a kid, but then,
Did you, at what point did you decide that I'm going to pursue this dream that I had as a child?
Well, for an Italian kid in the 70s, dreaming of becoming an astronaut was essentially impossible. There were few Americans, few Russians, and that's it. So this was a little seed that I threw in a drawer and never thought about it until later. I was drafted by the Army out of high school. I did my 1 year of compulsory military service, and then I decided, well, that's not bad, and I stayed. I did all sorts of crazy things. And then at 25, when I had a little bit more consciousness of what were my capabilities, what I really wanted, and things like this, I pulled out again this dream of becoming an astronaut and left the Army, started working on it. It took many, many years, but...
What did you have to do from that moment of consciousness to becoming an astronaut?
Well, I did... at that time there were no Italian astronauts as yet, but there were kind of rumors that in the next few years they would have started recruiting them or having at least the first Italian astronaut. And I did look at what were the requirements that the agency were looking for when people would respond to call for applications. And basically there were three requirements. You needed to have a university degree, a technical university degree. You need to speak English, and you needed to have a regular health status. So you don't need to be Superman, just a regular person with 2 eyes, 10 fingers, 2 lungs, right. But something normal. But so I did not have a university degree because right out of high school I went to the Army. I did not speak English because I studied French in school, so I was missing 2 of the major requirements. So I decided to quit my job with the Army and go back to university and do what I like to do, by the way, which was engineering. I did not do engineering because that was the path to being an astronaut. I really wanted to be an engineer. This is what I really liked. I was conscious of the fact that the chances of becoming an astronaut were close to nil. And so I needed to pick a profession that could be the profession for the rest of my life, and engineering was
So you never thought that engineering would have put you smack in line, of being an astronaut?
Well, actually, it was one of the requirements, but strangely enough, and I tell people all the time now, they ask me, I want to be an astronaut, should I do engineering or physics? And I look at them like, whoa, those are two completely different things. You should look at yourself and figure out what you like, because most likely that is going to be your profession for the rest of your life. And you cannot be a good physicist if you don't like it. You know, so what I thought is that, yeah, engineering will give me the requirements. I like engineering. I think I'm a good engineer, so I will do that, and that's what I picked. By the way, I picked aerospace engineering, which was good because it got me the degree that I need. But there are so many aerospace engineers that want to become astronauts that you get penalized because the competition is very high. You know, if you are, I don't know, a veterinarian, for example, oceanographer, there are very few oceanographer veterinarians that want to be astronauts. So if they need a veterinarian, you got picked almost immediately. See, that's what happened.
Okay, so you went into a space that was crowded, but somehow
Yes.
you still emerged and were selected in the 1998 group.
Well, yeah, it was not easy to be selected. I tried, the first time that I tried was actually in 1989, and I was not selected. That was the first selection for the first Italian astronaut. I went very close to be selected, but I was not selected. Then in 1992, there was another selection, and I applied, and again, I went, got really close, but no joy. And finally, in 1998, I started getting a little bit old, or older. The preferred age for recruitment was 27, 37, and I was already 40, so I was already out. I was start getting negative points, but I applied anyhow, and I gave my best, and I was, with my surprise, I was selected as one of the 2 astronauts in that selection.
What do you think counted for, so you were past the age bracket that would be considered first? Why do you think you were picked?
Well, that's a good question. I cannot answer that question clearly because I think the process, the selection process of astronauts is very, very complicated. Meaning that, you know, you have, in our case, we had 2 positions and you start with thousands of applicants. And of course, you started being really picky about medical requirements and professional requirements, educational requirements, language requirements. You know, you go really high and you throw away a lot of people, but you still end up with 25 candidates that are
and you
perfectly
only need
suited,
to pick one.
and you need 1 or 2, and so it's very, very difficult to understand how you get to that one. I think if I would be in the committee, I would try to talk to the person. First, you will figure out, do I want to work with that person? Do I want to be in space, stuck on a space station for 6 months with that person? So it means you need to kind of develop some kind of relationship with each one of the member of the commission. You need to show that you are flexible. Obviously, you are not an astronaut, so they cannot pick you for your characteristics as an astronaut. So they have to try to project what you are going to do in 10 years or in 15 years. So you probably need to show that you are flexible, you are able to learn, that you are social, that you like teamwork, for example. That's a very important part. Everybody thinks the astronaut needs to be geniuses. And I say, there are people that are able to work in a team for a long time in a kind of confined situation. That's much better than being a genius that, you know, get nuts after 5 minutes. So you need to project these things. I was, in these years while I was studying and I was working, I always tried to do things that would challenge me, bring me to the limit of what I thought were my capabilities. And many times I figured out that was not really the limit, it's what I thought, but I could go further. And so I pushed myself further, then a little bit further. And when I was at the committee that selected me, you know, I think this fact that I was challenging myself, that I would not give up so easily, that I tried all sorts of things, that I was in dangerous situations, and you know, I did not crack. I think all of those things played a role.
I'm so happy you mentioned that, because I wanted to learn a little about, I mean, Verano Brianza is a nice, quiet town. My little research shows, you know, a very picturesque municipality. with a beautiful, quaint church, the commune,
Yes.
where everyone goes to. Is that where you were baptized?
Well, actually, yes. And that's one of the points why it took me so long to try to get out of this environment, because it was a very nice environment. You know, all revolved around the church, the social system. We would do things. At that time, Lombardy, still today, it's one of the highest economical regions in Italy. You could have work, no problem. You don't really need to go to university. You can work. My mother did everything she could to ask me to go and work as an electrician on the factory close to the house, because, you know, people would just wake up in the morning, you know, clean, go to the factory, go up for lunch, go home for lunch, and they go back and come back at 5 o'clock in the evening. What's better than this? And a lot of people stayed in that way, and it took the army to take me out of there, to show that there is also another way of doing life. There is also a way to challenge yourself, and that's what happened. I mean, I grew up with a group of 10 people that all revolved in the same thing. 9 are still there. They are still married there, and they all live in the same town. Nevertheless, the town is really small. They all live there. You know, I have 2 brothers and 1 sister. Actually, 2 sisters and 1 brother, and they all are married, and they all live in a house that is less than 1 kilometer away from my mother's. Yes, from my mother's house or my parents' house. Yeah. And then it's me in the other side of the ocean. You know? So, but this is an interesting situation. Is that the Verano was an environment where you could grow up, and it was nice. Everything was there. It was at ease. So the challenge, strangely enough, when you are in this kind of situation, you don't get much challenge, and God knows, out of those 9 people that grew up with me, they could be doing God knows what, but they are really happy where they are, and, you know, life is kind of strange.
So your environment was changed because of compulsory national service in the army, but you got into the army. What about the army made you feel that, I think I'm ready to explore the world and be something different?
Well, you know, the army took me out of the little town, and then I had to deal with all sorts of other people coming, because this was a draftee, so there was a kind of the whole Italy was shown in there, you know, from the people that were nice to the people not that nice. You know, I need to deal with the structure of the army. I need to deal with a lot of things. So I discovered a lot of stuff that I did not know. But I discovered also that I discovered a lot of things about myself that I did not when I was in the little town, quaint, and I was not doing things because I was not forced to. And it was when I was in the army where they start pushing on my limits and show to me that, you know, maybe what you think are your limits, they are not that much limit. So go further and see what happens.
Was there ever a time in the army that you were pushed to a point where you thought you didn't want to do this again?
Well, all the time. I mean, that was, but that's what happens all the time. I mean, is that you get pushed, because what happened, I mean, in the first 2 years I was a regular paratrooper, so it was okay. But then I got into the special forces, and during the training of the special forces, which was about 1.5 years, there I got constantly pushed at the limits, and all the time I thought I was walking on a balcony looking down, and I was about to fall off. And I felt that I fall off, but you know, either when I was starting falling off, I could feel a hand grabbing me and pulling me in there, because that's the point of training. That's the point of allowing you to experience situations that are very dangerous in a kind of a safe manner. And I learned that, you know, with the team around you, with the right equipment, with the right state of mind, the right preparation, the right knowledge, you can really do things that are impossible.
Teamwork is a fantastic thing. I mean, it's something that the world can't do without. The team sports. In fact, family units themselves are considered teams. Absolutely. And they all have goals. Now, in the Army, would you say that the team in the Army is different from team of astronauts going into space?
I would I would not say so. I mean, I think a team is a team. You know, maybe the team in the Army is a little bit more structured in terms of roles, in terms of seniority, in terms of ranking, these kind of things. But at the end, you know, every team, in order to work, needs to have clear roles and needs to have, even more important, needs to have an objective. So that there should be an objective that is understood and wanted by each one of the team players. And then, in order to achieve that objectives, we need to develop a strategy, and then there needs to be somebody that make sure that this strategy works, and if it doesn't, does real-time changes and make sure that things are done. And in that sport, you know, this is what sport is, and this is what we were doing in the Army when we were doing crazy stuff, and essentially this is what we were doing in space. So I don't see that many differences. The only thing I would say that in space there is not such a strict hierarchy. And everybody has his own role, and it could be that one day, because of what you're doing, you are essentially the boss of the space station, and everybody is looking at you and making sure that you can do your job. And the other day it flips around. The role of the commander on the space station comes only in case of emergency. You know, right. If there is an emergency, then somebody needs to take action, then in that case, yes. But otherwise, it's more a kind of a democratic a flow of activity.
You're the sum total of your experiences, upbringing, and environment. What about your upbringing, you think, put you in the space of being as flexible as you are to do different things?
I don't know. That is a very difficult question for me to answer. I am an engineer, so I tend to look at things as from an engineering point of view. Maybe this is a question for a psychologist, and maybe it's a question for a sociologist.
That's right.
I think, you know, one of the things that my parents always did, they kind of never, you know, they wanted certain things from me, but at the end they actually let me do what I wanted.
We're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, the Executive Lounge will continue with my guest, Paolo Nespoli. He's an active astronaut, and we're going to talk all about space in a moment. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Executive Lounge with me, Angelo, and my guest, Paolo Nespoli, and sharing very interesting insights about you know, his preparation into the European Space Agency. You tried, how many times did you try to get in to the space agency?
3 times. Well, 3 times to become an astronaut, yes.
Okay. And each time, what gave you a good enough reason to try again?
Well, it's because it's something that I really wanted, and you know, at the end, I really kind of analyzed the situation like an engineer and figured out that I made mistakes, or at least there were certain things that I did not consider. And so I reanalyzed the whole situation, and then the next time I did something different. But this is what life is at the end, you know, that I'm not a genius, I make mistakes all the time. What I think it's good is that I try to learn from mistakes. So the problem is not making mistakes, the problem is not learning from the mistakes, and this is what I try to do.
That's fantastic, and I like that you said you learned from the mistakes, but it still took you 3 attempts. So was there ever a moment where you were frustrated that, you know what, I've looked at the situation, I've analyzed it, especially after the first time, and then I go a second time, and then I still didn't do, you know, cut the
Oh yeah, I mean, all the time I was very frustrated because there were things that I did not consider, and there were things that were not controllable. For example, political influence, or the fact that they wanted somebody from the Air Force, and I'm not Air Force, and so there were some things that I could not control. I did not even understand at the beginning that I cannot control, and I had to make peace with that. So for me, it's very difficult to accept things that I cannot change. But as I said, I kind of learned what was how the things worked and what I could do to make myself better, or at least stand out, because the problem is that this is like the Olympics. You know, you're at the Olympics, you're not competing with the guys that you find on the street. You're competing with people that are there and seriously they want this job and they work on it for a long time. So you really have to be good. And even if you are good as you can, even if you shine, there may be somebody else that shine better than you. And you know, you have to accept this one and learn, and next time you do it better.
So you went into this space, worked yourself through, and then got accepted. How's the news on your acceptance broken to you? Were you given a phone call, a letter, an email?
Yeah, it was a phone call. I mean, I got a pre-empty phone call. Hey, you're gonna get an email about this. So,
okay.
Because on the previous time I got nothing, and I got a telegram. They used to do telegram, and I got this telegram. There's a telegram coming, and I was shaking, and I open it, and I read, congratulations, you got all the way to the end of the selection phase. You have not been selected. Wow. I crumbled it
and that's twice.
That twice. So the third time I get this phone call. Well, you know, we just want to tell you that, you know, you will get an email. Just check the email because there's news about the selection. And I understood from the tone and what I was saying that, you know, it could probably be good news. So,
but when that email dropped, before you opened it, I mean,
well, you know, it's one of those things that you look at it and then you look at it and you read it again. You make sure that you're not, you know, inventing things, and then I think what I do, and it says that you're not authorized to inform anybody about this, because it's going to be public the day after, and so of course I called my mother.
You have to call mom. You know, I was just going to ask you, so who was the first person you told?
Yeah, I called my parents.
How did she take it?
Well, you know, my parents always been cool about these things, and she's like, well, okay, well, congratulations. That's my mother, and that's my parents. You know, they just took it like, okay, fine. Another of your crazy things, okay, fine.
I'm sure they believed in you, so it wasn't a big deal for them that you.
Well, I was a kind of a rebel child. I was a kind of a difficult child, and you know, they got to the point where they kind of decided that, okay, I let him do whatever he wants, and we will see what happens. So they were kind of cool and chill about the whole story. So.
Right. Fantastic stuff. Now, I'd like to talk about space. I mean, we all dream about space. And the first thing I always wonder is, what does weightlessness feel like? This whole business of no gravity. Well,
you know, in Shira, it's very, very difficult to explain it, because it's one of the things that we don't have here on Earth. And in fact, you know, I get this question all the time, and I kind of try to answer, and I always answered like, well, it's like being, you know, Superman. You can float around, you can go up there, you can move around, you know, but it doesn't quite cut it, said like that. And it took me a long time. Then, you know, a few months ago, I was talking with one of my fellow European astronauts, and we need to explain it better. And I think we came up with this explanation, which I think gets close to reality, is that here on Earth, because of gravity, we always feel our body. You know, you're sitting on a chair, you feel your hands, you feel your clothes on you, you feel, you know, you need to keep your head up. You feel gravity. There is no way, even if you're sleeping or you're laying in bed, it's the gravity pushing on your bed, so you feel the cover on top of you. Well, you are in space now, and nothing weighs anything. So everything is kind of floating, and it's one of the first times where you lose a consciousness of your body, and at a certain point it gets this thing where you have pure consciousness looking outside and thinking. So it's kind of your brain. You don't have a body anymore, and that is an incredible thing. And when you are looking, you know, you are at the cupola. We have this huge windows over the world, and you're there, and it's just your soul looking at Earth. It's an incredible feeling. Wow. That's what it is.
Would you recommend that people take commercial space flights if they have available?
I would think the commercial space flight in future will have a huge success, because in space there are two things that you cannot have anywhere else on Earth. It's like, people come to Ghana because they find things here that they are not in Paris. And in space, you find weightlessness, which is the first thing that you have to go up there. And the second one is that you can look at Earth from 400 kilometers away, which changes completely the way you look at your planet. I tell the school kids, here on Earth, we are like in a museum, and we want to look at a painting, a portrait with the nose attached to the painting like this, and you're trying to look at it, and you see, a little something, you cannot really see it, and then you want to see what the portrait is telling you. Stand back, and then you see the Mona Lisa that is kind of looking at you in a kind of a strange way, but you won't see it if you are against it, and that's what happens in space. So 400 kilometers, you look at this planet, and it's just incredible. And actually, it's so incredible that it's the first time that you really feel that's my house. But in a strange way, you are an extraterrestrial person because you're outside the Earth.
Outside the Earth, yeah.
And you feel
a longing, and you're
exactly,
like, that's where
exactly. That's my place. And you sit in a very different way. You don't see border anymore. On the space station, we are orbiting Earth very fast around Earth. The orbital speed is about 28,000 kilometers per hour. So it's about 8 kilometers per second. You're flying in this spacecraft at 8 kilometers per second, and the Earth is spinning around you at 8 kilometers per second. So essentially, when you are there, you go around the Earth in an hour and a half. You see the whole world, and you go through one sunset and one sunrise. So it's like 16 sunsets, 16 sunrises per day. You see 4 seasons, 5 continents, all the oceans. I mean, it's a completely different thing. And you get the perspective and a feeling that it's such a strong thing, and many astronauts have described it that they even came out with the name of it. It's the overview effect. The fact that, I'm up there and I look, look Italy, look France, Switzerland, Spain, or look, it's all the same. And we think that, I'm sitting in Milan and I do whatever I do here, it doesn't pertain anybody else in the world or in Europe, and that's not true. It's the same place. This is like Ghana here. You think, Ghana, it's, country by itself, but you are in the middle of all Africa. Whatever you do here, whatever your neighbors do, it's going to impact you, and you need to. I think one of the things that I was looking at this planet, and at a certain point I thought I was watching a ship. It's a ship flying in the universe. And it's a very nice ship, but you get this feeling that it's kind of like delicate. It's over. Everything is in equilibrium, and it doesn't take much to throw it off route. You see this atmosphere. There's a little bit of little fog. It looks like from the space station you blow a little bit too hard. You will go away. That's what it feels. And you think, wow. Our life depends on that thing, which seems so evanescent. And you think, if this is a ship, we are the sailors of the ship. But can you imagine a ship that flies in the ocean or goes in the ocean, and the people that are sitting in one side don't know what the other people are doing, or they do completely different things, or one pulls this way, the other way? What is going to happen to that ship? And this is what we are doing today. So we're starting getting strong enough and have an impact. You fly, you go through the sunset, and the whole Earth under you black lights up like a Christmas tree, and you see people everywhere, and you're thinking, whoa. Look at this, we are everywhere. We are kind of strangled on this earth, and it's out of question that we are doing something to the environment. We are changing it in one way or the other. It's out of question. Now we need to be careful, because a little bit today, a little bit tomorrow, and eventually it's going to be too much.
Very profound description about the feeling, but I'd like to learn your first mission. It was on the Discovery.
Yes, it was on Space Shuttle Discovery. Actually, it was a very complicated mission. We were 7 astronauts, and at that time when they called us and they informed us that we were selected as a crew for this STS, that was the technical term, STS 120, the 120th mission of the space shuttle. The chief of the astronaut office said, this is the most complicated mission that we ever designed to do in space.
Wow.
So your task is to do it and not screw up anything. So you better...
And it was that brief.
Yeah, you better start working together. And actually it was really interesting, because he said you have a year and a half to train for this specific mission, for the task of this specific mission, and tomorrow you will go for your first training. And we can look at each other and say, well, we do the training here in Houston, but at best we go to Cape Kennedy in Florida. And he said, no, we're shipping you to Alaska. And we kind of look at each other kind of strange, and he says, well, you need to live together for 12 days in this space doing very, very complicated job. You better get to know each other. So we are shipping you to Alaska, 6 kayaks, we'll land you on an island in the middle of nowhere, and then you have 12 days to paddle 150 kilometers in the other side, all together as a team. Not the strongest one paddles the farthest and forget about it. All together.
As a team.
And whatever you can carry, about this much, that's all you have. That's what you will have in space, about that much. And it's full of bears. So pay attention to what you're doing.
Wow.
It's like space. You do something wrong, you die. And there is the same. So a lot of parallel with the space mission. And we did our 12 days paddling around and doing all sorts of things. We did not kill each other. We learned a lot about each other. We came back and we started working for the mission.
Wow, that's crazy.
Right?
I must say it. I mean,
Yeah.
but I'm sitting here thinking, okay, all my life I wanted to be an astronaut. I get called up for my very first, or selected for my first mission, and it's complicated, and I have to go out into Alaska in the cold, and with people I don't know, likely going to get on my nerves and all of that. I mean, did you feel a sense of excitement about what was ahead of you, or were you a little apprehensive?
No. I mean, I all get excited in this kind of situation. Something new, something different. After all, I come from the Special Forces in the Army. That the crazier it is, the better it is. And so I thought it was a good challenge. I mean, it was a good, interesting situation. Never been to Alaska. Let's go to Alaska. And it turned out to be very, very challenging, actually. The weather was really bad, and it was raining. It was kind of bad, but again, it kind of strained us, but at the same time really made us closer. Everybody kind of figured out his strength and his capabilities, and at the end, the commander at that time was Pamela Melroy. It was there were only 2 shuttle commanders, 2 missions with shuttle female commanders. That she was the second one, and when we came back, she had a much better understanding of our capabilities, or our strength, and she assigned tasks accordingly, which was very good.
But you were out there all by yourself?
No.
You had command oversight?
Well,
While you
we
were
had
out?
the whole crew.
Okay, so the whole crew was out in the middle of nowhere
Yes.
in Alaska by
Yes.
yourself?
Yes.
How did the team leaders or the commanders know whose strength lied where?
This is an interesting situation, because what they told us there, they actually made us go through the role of a commander. So yes, we had a mission commander, but she was the commander one day. And then in turn, we were all commanders, because the point is exactly that. If one day you are, working with a robotic arm, and you are doing this very complicated task, you need to have the team. It's like you are the commander. And so they made us go through the task in order to understand what it means to be the leader, but also what it means to be the followers. If you are the leader, you cannot start shouting orders, things around. At the same, followers doesn't mean you're sitting there, don't do anything. It means you're providing inputs to the team. So when the commander of the day would decide, well, today we are paddling 30 kilometers and we are doing this, that, every one of us would, raise his hand and agree, disagree, pitch in, provide something. We share tasks, who goes and look for water, who is cooking, who is building the camp, things like that. And it was really interesting. You know, this share of tasks, it was very important.
Were all the people in that crew from a military background?
No, we had out of 7, we had 3 people from military, 4 people with military background, and 3. But you know, you are once you go at NASA, we have been training like for 10 years before I actually flew. So the fact that you were in the military a long time ago, it plays a role, but you know, it's more.
You kind of go through a whole new process, and a whole new reorientation.
True.
So, descent, coming from space into Earth.
Well, a return to Earth is it's an interesting moment because it's the end of the mission, and if you're done good, which normally it is, it's a kind of a moment where you're thinking, yes, I want to go back to my planet. I want to, you know, because you feel the strain and the fact that you've been under tension for, in this case, was like 15 days on this shuttle mission, but on the other flights were like 5 months, you know, which is not. It's not couple of days. So you come back. You are from one side tired, and you want to go back. From the other side, you are happy that you have done and you were able to accomplish what you have accomplished. That you managed to do everything without destroying anything or killing yourself and the other people, which is it's not a given. Yeah. And then you have to go through this physical act of going back and having gravity take possess of your body again, which is an amazing thing. You know, you don't understand, or this process that I told you before, where you lose your body, it comes in little by little, and you almost don't feel it. You feel it when you feel the gravity come back to you, and you feel this monster, this elephant laying on top of you. And you're thinking, how is it possible? I cannot live like this. I felt like I was in prison. I felt somebody chained me down to that I could not move anymore. You know, every movement, everything. I was looking at my watch and having difficulties lifting my head because the watch is too heavy. You know, I could. The vestibular system gives you strange things because you're not used anymore. You know, you flip your head like that, nothing happens. Now you come back to the earth, and you feel your head is like going all over the place. So it's a lot of things happen, you know, from the psychological point of view, finishing the mission, from the physical point of view, going through all the steps that means coming from space and going down to Earth, which are physically challenging. And then once you land on the ground, you are now slammed down on your chair and you cannot move anymore, and every movement you do, it's like somebody takes you and rolls you over 15 times. So it's very provocative, and it's interesting. It's an interesting process. So
when you land, I mean, what happens? Do you get out and walk, or you get wheeled out?
Well, so it depends. On the first flight, I flew on the space shuttle. Space shuttle lands in almost like an aircraft, almost. Lands on the runway, and then I was upstairs. There are two decks, and it's very difficult to go down. Actually, there is a little hole with a little hatch with a little stairs. Very difficult. So somebody comes up, and I did not realize how bad it was, because I was sitting on my chair like this, and then this engineer came up, and I just did like that to watch him, and I felt oh my God, what is this? And I felt like, whoa! And then, you know, I tried to lift my hand to remove the helmet, and I almost could not, because they were far too heavy. So he said, well, let me help you. And, you know, he click, pulled out the helmet, and I was like, oh my God, where are we here? And then he said, well, we need to go down. And I said, okay. He says, hold on to the chair in front of you, lift yourself up. And I felt I could not. I mean, I was so, and this was only 15 days in space. I took me all the energies I could to come out of the thing, and then turn around, and then you know, go down these things, and then I bent to go out the hatch, and I stop everybody, say, stand by, stand by, stand by. And I pull out my barf bag and I, vomited the hell, whatever I had eaten in the previous 15 days. And then, oh my God. And then, little by little, and it takes quite a while to get there. And this is only 15 days.
So how many days did it take for you to
You can imagine what happens if you stay 5 months.
5 months, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So how long does it normally take to kind of get all your senses
Well,
back
in this case, it actually took 24 hours. I still remember, and it's very subjective, by the way. I do feel the re-entry very strongly. Some of my other crew members, they were a little bit, but they were okay. There were a couple of guys, they actually went out partying in the evening. I was in bed, I could not even move. And they went out and I'm like, you're crazy or something.
Wow.
Well, they want to show off a little bit, but I could not even have, even if I wanted. I could barely walk. Yeah. But then it was interesting. Next day, I was waiting for the plane at Cape Kennedy to bring us back to Houston, and I kind of was walking like kind of a drunk or something.
Wow.
And I lay down under the sun, and I was breathing in and feeling the nature or something. And I kind of felt like if somebody took a kind of a brush and brushed me, and I kind of felt like
it had just suddenly left.
And I stood up, wow, okay. And I was normal. And the other guys look at me like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, I'm normal. Oh, come on, that's so how bad I was. This was after, 24 hours on the first flight. But the other flight, it took 2 weeks, 3 weeks before you can, feel a little bit normal. Actually, it took 6 months to recover completely because the circulation is not the same anymore. Your head, you don't see the same way. You get so many complications because of being in space. You lose part of your skeleton. You get a lot of radiations. As I said, the circulation, my leg would get, my ankle would get swollen up because there was no circulation anymore. So it took quite some time. They even when you feel like, let's say after a month, you feel pretty normal, and they make you do a test on a special board that moves, and they show you that your equilibrium is not up to par. Wow. You think you're normal, but if somebody comes and kind of push you fall off because you're not, or you trip a little bit, and regular trip gone. that you would normally, not even think about it, and it's very difficult to recover because
wow.
you don't have the muscles, you don't have the capability yet.
This is surreal, and we're going to take our final break, and when we come back, we'll learn some more from Paolo Nespoli. This is the Executive Lounge, and I'm Ishirado. Stay tuned, don't go away. Welcome back to the Executive Lounge with me, Ishirado, and my guest Paolo Nespoli is an active astronaut. You don't meet. It's a very rare and surreal experience, even for you, but for me, hearing it. Do you think that the continent of Africa, or a country like Ghana, should entertain ambitions of a space program?
Well, space is becoming more and more important as a third dimension. Communications, control of the airspace. Actually, from space you can control the natural resources, making sure that the water in your reservoir are at a certain level. You can even count down the way some fruit grow from space. You can count the produce. So it's a very important resources, and it's out of question that we need, all the countries in the world need to make sure that they understand the availability of these resources and to use it at best to make the nation work better. I think, we have several problems as human beings. One of them is that we measure the future with our meter, which is years. Mm-hmm. But that's not what we should do. We should think, where are we going to be in 500 years, or where are we going to be in 1,000 years? And it's out of question that Africa, with all the resources, with all the population, with all the richness that has, will play an important role in the world. You need to understand this, and you need to capitalize on this one. So it's out of question that Ghana will participate in making sure that this ship will fly in space in the best way. I mean, we just have to find a way to work together.
So there are a bunch of people out there watching us today, kids, adults. What would you say would be the thing they ought to start looking at, no matter what dream they have, be it going into space, or what worked for you?
Well, I tell people all the time that you should probably start looking at yourself, start looking inside you, and try to figure out what are the things that make you click. You know, what are your passions? What are the things that you do and you don't feel you're working? And try to capitalize on those and make those your passion. I mean, your work. I always tell, yeah, it's good. Of course, lawyer make a lot of money, but if you don't like to be a lawyer or be in a tribunal, it will be really painful. Even if you make a lot of money, you will be looking at your watch. Yeah. 5 o'clock, that's it. I'm going playing golf. Well, think about it. You could have been a golf player and if you make 3 times more money than a lawyer if you do it right. Anything you can do. You can be a taxi driver, you can be a haircut, you can be a stylist, you can be a designer, you can be anything. So look at your passion first. Try to make them the things that will support your life, and because if you do things with passions, this is when you're creative. This is when you come up with crazy stuff. This is when you don't feel you're pushed if you push the limits, and then think that you can do all sorts of crazy things. I always tell people, you need to have a dream that if you tell people, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be an astronaut. They look at you and they look at me like, oh, yeah, okay, study, you will go to the moon. And then they turn around, because it was impossible. Yeah. So okay, you don't tell a kid, no, forget about it. But these are the things that people need to dream in every profession. I don't know, you're a chef or a cook, you need to cook the best pizza, the best whatever, invent some dish, and then start working on it. Because yes, if it is a very incredible, strange dream, there is a very good chance that it will not happen, even if you try hard, even if you try 15 times. It's difficult, by definition, it's not going to happen.
That's right.
But sometimes it does. Sometimes when people don't believe that it will not happen, when they really give out their best, when they come up with creativity, when they do little step at a time. If you try to go too long, you're going to break a leg. A little step at a time, you'll get there. But you need to have consistency. You need to learn from mistakes. All of us make mistakes. When we try to do things that we don't know, guess what? You're going to make a mistake. If you don't make mistakes, it means you're not trying hard enough. You're still doing the same thing. Do something else and you will make mistakes. But mistakes are important if you don't get killed, by the way. But if you survive and you learn from them, and then next time you don't make a mistake anymore, or you do another mistake, and your knowledge gets so big that you will be able to achieve what you want to achieve, avoiding all the mistakes. This is so bottom line, dream impossible things, and then wake up and start working on it, little by little, because even impossible dreams sometimes come true.
Wow, that's some awesome stuff. As we get ready to wrap up, what are some of your interests? What do you do when you just want to relax, when you're not getting ready to go to space?
I used to do a lot of practical things. I have a flight license. I like to fly. I used to do a lot of scuba diving. I used to do rock climbing. I used to do crazy things. I have a motorcycle. All those active things that involve. But I like also, for example, build stuff. So I always like to buy electrical components and then build some things, or just take the computer, take it apart, and put it back together. You know, if anything breaks on my house, my wife gets nuts every time because I will not call the repairman, anyone, until I figure out I cannot do it. And sometimes it takes days, you know, where the washing machine exploded in the house of 200 pieces, and she's like, I need to wash and I cannot wash. Slow down, I think I found what's wrong and I ordered the part, let me put it together. And most of the time it works, by the way. I think we lost a little bit this capability of doing things ourselves with our hands. It's easy to call somebody else. We lost a little bit of this, and I like, when I can, I like to do it all the time.
Fantastic stuff. So, final question is, how do you prepare yourself when you have to go on a mission?
Well, a mission is a complex activity that requires a lot of teamwork. And luckily enough, we have a structure. We have the space agencies that have done this long enough. And they actually have a long list, or clear list of things that you need to do. So if you just follow what they tell you to do, they train you to do, it's already good enough. Obviously, you need to prepare yourself from a psychological point of view. You're going to be away from your family for a long time. You're going to be out of the world. And maybe strange things can happen. You know, my second mission, my mother died. I was in space. And this was very heavy for me. Second mission...
Did you know while you were out there?
Well, when I left, everything was okay. But then I started feeling that something was wrong. And then eventually... She passed away. But then on the second mission, on the third mission actually, I was up there and suddenly there was a hurricane coming towards Houston. And sure enough, my wife and 2 kids are home alone and there's a hurricane coming through. And I feel like, I want to be there helping them, and the water is rising and the sky is coming down and I'm not there. So you need to prepare yourself for these things. You need to prepare and understand that at the end you are a human being and you're going to be in a situation. You have to, you know, focus, understand on what you need to focus, and it requires a little bit of attention there.
Paolo Nespoli, it's been fantastic talking to you, and my own little claim to fame is that I did meet an astronaut in this lifetime.
No.
But certainly lots of lessons to take away from you.
But Inshira, thank you very much for having me on your show. Should we call it a show?
It is.
It feels more like a lesson. More like a lesson thing. So, you know, it's like you put me through a lot of things. So,
yeah, no, I've taken quite a lot away, and I have a tradition at the end of the show. 5 things I'm taking away from our conversation. For me, number 1 is that you should dare to do crazy things.
Yes.
The crazier, the better, for as long as you're not killing yourself in the process. And number 2, you're going to fail, whether you like it or not. But the most important thing is that when you're failing, you're learning from the failure.
True.
Number 3 is that teamwork is important. No matter where you find yourself, there'll be days you lead, there'll be days you follow. But what's important is that on the days you're leading, you lead well. On the days you follow, you support, and support very
Absolutely.
well. Number 4 is that you should learn to have a mentality that is hard to break down, and resilience. You know, that you should be resilient, knowing that when you fall, it's important that you rise and go on again. For example, you talked about how you're out there in space and you're feeling that there's something wrong and your mom passes away, but it didn't stop you from focusing and finishing the mission, you know. And the final thing is, I think for me, is excitement. That be thrilled, be passionate about the things that you do. You clearly are passionate about what you do. And these are the 5 lessons I'm taking away from this. I'm sure for you, the audience around Africa watching us, you would be taking away a whole lot more. So once again, Paolo, thank you so much. And it's a real pleasure and an honor to meet you and interact with you.
Thank you, Inshira. Really appreciate it. Right. Thank you.
And for you, catch us again next week on the Executive Lounge, where we bring you the best minds, always. Stay focused, go forward, make rain. Shalom.